Coming up on this episode of Up for Debate, we're talking movies that became TV shows. Yes, if you can believe it, big screen adapted to the small screen. It's a new fad. So Matt and I will discuss the ones that worked, the ones that didn't, and the ones we would like to see on the small screen. Stick around because it's time for Up for Debate. This is Up for Debate, episode number 67, recorded December 1st, 2016. Movies on the small screen. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the show that works better in smaller episodic format than it does in feature length. I'm Sean Jennings, joined as always by our resident director and all-around producer, Matt. Hello, Matt.
Producer of the good times. How are we today, Mr. Sean?
I am great. Thrilled to be back. Thrilled to be here after our small Thanksgiving break, following up on our Halloween episode, of course. I'm pleased to be back here chit-chatting.
Chit-chatting. Yeah. So I'm glad we're in our smaller episodic form. Definitely works a lot better than the long form. Mostly because then I have to do a lot less talking. And when I do less talking, I get to save my vocal cords. And so that works out super well.
I think it does too, and I think it's going to work well for our topic this episode, which is, as we mentioned at the top, movies that made their way onto television. Now, Matt, this is not necessarily a new fad, but it is an increasing fad of these large adaptations for television. Recently, I've been watching a lot of Westworld on HBO, which, as you know, was originally a movie. Actually, a couple movies that they then turned into a TV show in the 80s that didn't work, and then just turned it into a new successful HBO show. But you'd actually be surprised at how many movies became TV shows. There's quite a long list, and even more important, there's a list of like 100 of them they're working on currently to get them on television. And we talked about this. We did an episode, God, so far back on remakes, reboots, and there was a third thing in our title. And I think that it's becoming more and more common that ideas are not reused, but they're shared and their universes are kind of expanded. And so I think we'll take the opportunity to talk about a few of these. Matt, are there any that on the top of your head that you can think of movies that were made into TV shows?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts about that, but I just wanted to start off. You mentioned Westworld.
Yes.
Did you know who the original writer of Westworld was? Who wrote the script for the movie? I believe the story. Who wrote the story?
Would you believe that I actually know that?
Yeah.
And that would be none other than Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton, yes, the original author of Jurassic Park, Andromeda Strain. He had another really famous one in there, like a movie. Oh, Sphere. If you ever saw Sphere, that was another sci-fi hit. Yeah, so Michael Crichton, he wrote Westworld. I've heard really good things. I haven't seen it yet, but it's true. Like everything that was once old is now new again. I think we talked about that in length when we talked about reboots and recreation of old movies. Now today we're talking about kind of the phenomenon in reverse, talking about a movie that then went on to become a TV show. Oh. Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yes, absolutely. Famously as a not as great adaptation.
Yeah, that's I think one of the examples that kind of failed there. My Big Fat Greek Wedding that didn't do so well in the television format. I think it lasted one season, if I'm not mistaken.
Barely that. And I'd say more often than not, it actually doesn't work.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a quite a long graveyard of series that were brought to television and quickly shut down. Like, for example, did you know that there was a Ferris Bueller television show?
I did not know that.
It was called Ferris Bueller. For the movies, it carried over none of the original actors or writers. In fact, it didn't even take place in Chicago. It took place in Santa Monica. Really, the only thing it had in common was the character Ferris Bueller and the fact that he broke the fourth wall. Big failure.
I guess Malcolm in the Middle kind of did that already, right? Breaking the fourth wall.
Sure.
This is a TV show. Malcolm did that all the time.
But I think that's kind of the problem with taking a movie and bringing it on the small screen is you bring a level of expectation of what you're getting when because Malcolm in the Middle was a new idea. You give it a lot more opportunity to grow and develop and adapt, kind of enjoy it for what it is. When you bring it from the big screen, especially from a very successful film franchise, it has to hit a certain level of quality and of structure and of story that I think is difficult when you just quickly adapt it for television.
Yeah. It's like a huge task, monumental task, I think, to take a movie and really split it into episodic format and then basically rewrite its entire existence and like set it up for the small screen. Seems very tedious, and it seems very unnatural to do that process.
Well, I think
from a writing standpoint.
And when I thought about talking about this topic, I figured out what works and what doesn't work. I think I've solved all their problems, Matt. They are in luck.
Good. I'm glad they're all listening.
And I think the problem is good movie to TV adaptations are not about characters. They're barely even about stories. It's about universes. It's about creating a universe in which you can tell many stories. Westworld is a good example. It's not about the same characters. It's about a sci-fi futuristic theme park filled with robots. You can tell a million stories in that location. Another one is Fargo, right? Which I don't know if you've seen the series. They took the movie Maine to the series. It's not about necessarily the same characters. It's about the same town and about similar situations, but it's not about the same people. And I think that's why some of these that have carried over, Bates Motel is, well, and then you look at ones that are also prequels. Again, I think you need to have a really strong sense of universe to carry over, because if you don't have that, like Ferris Bueller being a good example, if you don't hit that one character perfectly in the TV show, it's not going to work because you didn't build. There's no story in Ferris Bueller. It's Matthew Broderick as Ferris Bueller is the movie. Let's be real. Yeah. And there's nothing of his life outside the very narrow bit of that movie. So how do you build a series out of that?
Some of the best TV shows in general have just been great and having great, like you said, an environment in which to tell many different stories. Firefly is a great example of that. Like, you can tell a million stories in the Firefly universe. Just the way that environment is constructed. They had Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think it was another really good example of a kind of a TV adaptation of a series of movies, pretty much a genre of movies. They set up a really good, really rich environment for stories to be told that could last, multiple seasons. And that's the thing, is that it grants it a sense of longevity, a sense of almost immortality, a show that can have, story after story after story being told in that universe. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm also coming to mind is the Clone Wars,
sure,
the animated series based on the Star Wars movies and on Star Wars canon, the Star Wars universe. The Clone Wars series, you had 5 or 6 seasons of this animated show that just told, countless. Every episode was pretty much a different story, and you had your arcs thrown there in like multi-episode.
Matt, we're losing you a little bit there.
Oh, I think the best stories are the ones that are told, from told in a rich universe.
Agreed. Agreed. And you may be interested to know that, as I mentioned at the. By the way, do you remember the movie Shutter Island? With
I did. That's a TV show also.
they're going to make that into a TV show.
Yeah, they're gonna make that into a TV show.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that movie. With who was the actor? Matt Damon?
It was DiCaprio.
Oh, DiCaprio.
No, Leo DiCaprio.
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah, it was DiCaprio.
Yes, it took me a minute.
Yep. That was a really good movie.
Yeah, I don't know if
I won't spoil it for anyone, but it had a really good twist at the end. I thought the twist was phenomenal.
And we could do a whole episode on twist movies. But the problem with the twist movie is it's only good once.
Yeah.
You can never enjoy it again. It's forever.
No.
Nobody goes back and rewatches The Sixth Sense.
Now, why do you need to enjoy it again though?
Because
why can't you just be happy watching it once and then have that memory forever?
Well, then at that point, put it on Snapchat. Like, that's you're defeating the point of recording it.
I mean, this might surprise you, but I rarely rewatch.
You don't.
With the exception of Star Wars, which I've watched.
Okay. I think you're missing out. I love rewatching a few movies multiple times, but
you know what's going to happen. So what's the point of watching it again?
Yeah, but that's okay.
So I think it's true of any movie, if it's a twist or not.
But when there's a twist, the problem with a twist is by definition, the writers have to spend the whole movie setting up that twist. Whereas in a regular movie without a twist, you enjoy all the little bits of the story throughout. If you know the twist, then the whole rest of the movie is basically just setting up something you already know. Like it's hard. I think it's hard to enjoy the story.
It seems like they set up. They don't set up the story for the twist. I think they set up the entire story and then just take that story and just flip it on its head. I think that's what makes a really good twist.
Oh, I agree. It makes a good twist. Really it doesn't make a good movie. A good twist is not a good movie.
No, I would not say that. I don't think that every single movie that has a twist in it is a great movie, or even a good movie by any standards. But I would say that movies that have a good twist are, by definition, more interesting movies.
I suppose that's true.
I think that they make them worth watching to a degree, but only once, for sure.
Now,
yeah.
Circling back to the topic here, one thing I do find interesting though when they adapt these is when they do it and there are varying degrees of relationship to the source material. A good example of that is Teen Wolf. Are you familiar with the Teen Wolf?
I am actually not too familiar with it. I think it was it's the actor who played Teen Wolf is Marty McFly, right?
Michael J. Fox, that's correct.
Michael J. Fox. I lost his actor name.
In a movie so bad it's good, Teen Wolf, horrible movie, makes no sense. It's not even very good. I really like it because it's very dumb. But what's interesting to me is they took just the concept of a teen who is a werewolf and made a super dramatic, good-looking teens MTV show out of it that's been on for 8 seasons. And really has very little in common with the source material, which is meant to be in many ways more humorous.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. You basically change the entire audience at that point, right?
Yeah, at that point you have to say they just used
it. It's with a movie like Fat Greek Wedding. You're expecting the people that like that movie to come back and like that TV show. You're expecting the same people that went out to see all the Star Wars movies will enjoy the Clone Wars, the cartoon show, probably kids. You expect, what was the other movie? Not the Westworld. You expect people from the Marvel universe to enjoy Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But yeah, with your example, I think you're playing to a completely different audience. Like the people that enjoyed Teen Wolf, probably just kind of people looking for a good comedy. Anybody really,
I would bet
This one specifically kind of like the teenage girl demographic.
I would
The
bet
show, at least.
80% of MTV's Teen Wolf viewers have never even heard of the movie Teen Wolf. They merely just bought it for the name only.
Yeah.
I think an interesting parallel is this season new on Fox is A Lethal Weapon, the series based on the movies. And in the
Yeah.
Lethal Weapon series, they have Murtaugh and Riggs and the actual characters from the movie with the same personalities. They solve crimes every week. I actually enjoy the show because it's a good mix of cop procedural and they have some action stuff in there, like in the movie, which is good. But that is, if you like the movie, you should like the show because it's extremely similar. Teen Wolf is not a great example. Stargate is a good example of that, where they took the movie Stargate, made the series, same concept, similar style, very related. It's just weird for me with some of these that are a little farther off that they basically just buy the names, and I think that'll be more common as time goes on, where they merely just want the name recognition, and it's either very early prequels or super barely related characters to the actual film itself. I think that'll be more common.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Do you think in general that do you think that movies to TV works better than TV to movie?
That's a very good question, and I say yes. I think movies to TV works better, and I think that's because when you're taking a TV show and making a movie, you're taking a traditionally longer form episodic format and having to condense it to a single story in 2 hours. The Simpsons movie is a good maybe example of this. There aren't a lot that I can think of that were super super successful, and most of them are animated that I can think of. But I think, although I guess Mission Impossible might be a good example of one that was successful going to movies.
Yeah.
Again,
Smart
Get Smart. Yeah, any of those.
wasn't super successful, but it happened and it wasn't terrible.
I just think, yeah, maybe it's just really hard to say if one is more successful than the others, because I think the right property going in either direction can work.
Yeah.
I think how do I want to say this? I think the bigger the universe, the better it works in episodes. I think that's how I would phrase it. I think like a Lethal Weapon, where it's very narrow in what you're talking about, right? It's Riggs, it's Murtaugh, stuff explodes, they solve crimes. That works as a movie or as a TV show. I think that goes pretty well. But when you talk like a Westworld or something with a really expansive universe, you want to tell many stories over a long period of time, you're going to do better in TV. I think that's the good. And I think anything that kind of splits that difference can go either. Marvel is a good example of this, where their stories can be big, but they can also be small. And I think that's when they can kind of cross. Daredevil works better as a series than it did as a movie. Okay, well, what does that say? And I think going back and forth, some properties are just going to be better at that. Now, Matt,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what do you think a good movie is that would make a quality TV show?
Well, Sean.
And if do you need a minute to think? Because I can go first.
Okay.
I don't have to, though.
So was that were you done? I didn't know if there was more.
No. I'm just okay. Asking a movie that would make a great TV show.
Okay. Any movie that is out that is ever was, any movie that ever was,
any movie that you can think of
that would make a good TV show.
You're a Hollywood executive. Oof. You're sitting in your office. You're out of real new ideas, so instead you're going to steal one that already exists. What is a good movie that would make a TV show?
Oh man, I think my go-to movie to turn into a TV show, I think a serious answer, I would say Lord of the Rings. I think there's plenty of uncharted territory there that could be turned into. I don't know if it would be a successful.
Didn't they make like 8,000 of those movies?
They made a lot of movies, but I mean, like we said before, it's the universe. You have a pre-established universe that you don't really have to add more new ideas onto. You have to add some new ideas and new concepts, but pretty much all of the lore is already established for you to just kind of work with. They're just pieces to move around. Um, I think that would be my go-to one serious answer. And I think my joke answer here, I'd like to see them do um, I'd like to see them do like a Pixar's Universe TV show where like all the Pixar movies were wrapped up into a TV show. And they like Monsters Inc. was in there and Nemo was in there too.
Cars and all.
Yeah, they all just are in this show and they're interacting with each other. Like maybe the Monsters Inc. people are driving the cars from Cars around,
That doesn't
and
make
the
sense.
guy from Up is sailing around. I don't know.
That is
He's
not
probably
canon,
the villain.
Matt.
Who cares about canon? It's Pixar. Canon.
What the Pixar television universe of characters, and
Yeah.
they all
Why
hang
not?
out.
Why not? They all hang out, and it's kind of like Friends, but for kids, and with these little cartoon characters.
And the fat people from from Wall-E, and the grumpy old
Yeah.
guy from Up.
I figure the grumpy old guy from Up, he could probably be like the villain. This could be like a Saturday morning show,
Oh my God, this is
syndicated TV show.
that is bizarre. That is bizarre. But I will say, just quickly on Lord of the Rings, I used to think really high fantasy would never work on television. And then Game of Thrones
So
happened.
Game of Thrones,
Which
exactly.
I'm still shocked happened. Like, how is
Well,
how
you know,
is
you know
Game
what
of
the
Thrones
key to that
successful?
was, right? You know what the key to that was?
What?
Appealing to the masses through gore and extreme
sex.
violence and sex. Yeah.
HBO basically. Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was.
Like-
They don't really. I don't think anybody. I don't think your average Game of Thrones viewer really has a complete grasp of what the hell is going on. There's just enough gratuitous sex and violence to keep them interested.
So do you think Lord of the Rings should go extreme gore, extreme sex HBO, or do you think it would work on like an AMC or a TNT kind of, more basic cable channel?
I think that Lord of the Rings I think it would work better than Game of Thrones if you keep the original source material. Just because, well, the original Game of Thrones, the novels, there was a fair amount of gore and sex. I mean, it was pretty much all gore and sex, but written down in a very eloquent narrative. But I think Lord of the Rings didn't have any of that stuff, and still it appealed to the masses. So at least the movies did, and the books to a lesser extent. So I think that the show itself wouldn't really. I mean, you could put that stuff in there, and I think Tolkien would probably roll over in his grave. But I think that it wouldn't ruin it, and I don't think it would. I don't think you need the gratuitous violence and sex with Lord of the Rings. I think it could work without it. I think it could stand alone. I think it has stood alone. The movies are still massive successes. Even the Hobbit trilogy, which I didn't really expect much out of. So.
Well, I had two, and one is kind of cheating because they're actually making it into a TV show. But I thought it was such a good idea, I wanted to claim it. The Truman Show, the Jim Carrey film.
Well, isn't that Big Brother? The TV show?
Well, kind of, but and it is a little Westworldy, but I would love to see a series set either A, behind the scenes of the people who actually work the control rooms at the Truman Show, or B, like, how did it all start? Like with the sketchy guy who created it, and like someone had to tell them this was a bad idea, and like how did it get created? Like, I would watch a series about that. Like, that sounds really interesting to me.
How long do you think that series would last, though? I only see like 1, maybe 2 seasons in there. They'd be good. I think they'd be good seasons.
I think you'd have to diverge from the movie a bit, and I think you'd have to create some. If you did it more in the sort of present day, quote unquote, of being behind the scenes, I think you'd have to manufacture drama. I don't think it could follow the movie, like him leaving the show. But I think problems are going to come up. He's going to start discovering stuff, and I think you can stretch that out over a few seasons.
They would have that season finale where he like almost discovers something, and it's a cliffhanger, and then
And they're,
it gets ruined in the
you get the
first
guy
episode.
behind the scenes who's trying to sabotage it, and you think of who's the mole, and I think there's some room there.
There's something in there, yeah.
I'd watch
There's a
that.
universe in there.
And the other one, and maybe this is a little cheap too, but you talk about a universe where I think there are more stories to be told that would work well in episode format is Harry Potter. And I got to be honest, I haven't seen Fantastic Beasts, but I think one of the things about the Harry Potter universe that makes me uninterested in it is those stupid kids. Like, I really don't want to hear about Hogwarts and Harry Potter. Like, that's just... I enjoyed it as a kid, but I'm just saying, I think there's a large swath of the population that likes the idea of this magic universe. That's why Fantastic Beasts is successful, but don't care about these kids. Imagine, if you will, all the stories that can be told in this huge universe that has been created. For example, you could set a political thriller in the Ministry of Magic. I'd watch that.
I'd watch.
What about the story of a family in like the Philadelphia suburbs or something who are just, what is it like to be a magic family in just normal, everyday modern society? Maybe the neighbors find out about it. You got to hide some stuff. Maybe there's like some sketchy...
That's a really
dark-
good show.
Like, I'd watch these. Like, that's really cool to me. It's like this fantasy mixed with reality stuff. That's what Harry Potter does
you might
really
have
well.
some. I think that would be a fantastic show. I think I would definitely watch that. What about like you said, what if there was like a West Wing-esque episode, like West Wing-esque series within the Ministry of Magic, where like some kind of conspiracy comes up, they have to work together to hide it.
Throwing a little House of Cards in there, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I'd watch that in a heartbeat with
Political
the
intrigue
magical
to
element.
Wizard. How about a Diagon Alley? You can do an entire series all about
Absolutely.
Diagon Alley. There's so much like stuff that goes on there.
That J.K.
So many
Rowling
stories.
does great in big, broad brushstrokes, I think. I don't think she's a great detail writer, to be completely honest. I don't think that's her strength. I think she sets up these big things very well. And I think you have a lot of opportunity. Hell, I would even watch a series about the teacher's lounge at Hogwarts. Like, that could be more interesting than the stupid kids bumbling around and fucking stuff up all the time. So, that's a universe I'd like to explore in a more adult... Like, I'm not saying go full HBO, nudity, swearing, but I want to see it from an adult perspective. I don't want to read it as a kid's perspective. And the later movies did that a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually the direction she went with. As Harry and his friends grew older, like the books became more mature. And yeah, like they didn't really have to go the sex and violence route, but they just became, the undertones were just way more mature. It wasn't this silly, magical world anymore. It was like, he's like, this evil dark force is like legitimately taking control.
Yeah, I think there's some room there. But I think there, I read a big list of all the things being adapted for television. I think there's a lot of space out there. I think it's just a matter of execution. But I'm excited because again, I think it's a bit easier going from movies to TV because you watch a movie and you're like, but I want more. Like the 2 hours is over. I want, like, who are these people? I want to learn more. That was really interesting. Television now allows us to do that. So
yeah,
I think it's
a new frontier.
Yeah, I'm not. I know people are upset with like, oh, there are no more original ideas and they're just copying it. You know what? Fuck you. Like, I think that's okay. I really do. I think that as long as you're not being cheap about it, I think you can tell really interesting stories within an existing universe.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, that's it.
That's it for me.
That's it. We're out of we don't have 2 hours in your local theater to go through all this, but we did get through our half-hour episode. So you'll have to. That's it. We're just telling more stories over a longer period of time. We'll be back.
Shows with Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
What was that?
I think more shows within the Harry Potter. We just solved the problem right there.
We did. I mean, honestly, I think this is pretty clear. Matt, this episode, you've been a little bit like another movie that became a TV show, Max Headroom. If you're familiar with that reference.
I'm not.
Okay. I'll explain to you off the air who Max Headroom is, because we have to wrap up. But thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back next time with an episode all about condiments. You're not going to want to miss it. It'll be on our website along with this episode at upfordebate.tv. but I recommend you subscribe. You click the subscribe button on the site. It tells you all the places you can subscribe, like iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, and so much more. It'll let you know when the new episodes become available. And, of course, you can follow us at Up for Debate TV on Twitter and Facebook.com/UpForDebateTV. On behalf of Matt, this is Sean, thanking all of you for joining us and hoping we'll see you next time for even more great discussion here on Up for Debate.